Okay, so I have full-size drawing of the plan view of my table, and you'll notice that there's a curved line here signified by a leg curve. This will be my drawer front, leg, so on and so forth. What I'm trying to do now is to establish how to start laying out the curve for my brick lay. Now, what I've done is I've ripped two different widths of material, which are way overkill. This is 3 5/8. The other is closer to 4 1/4 in width. Thickness I'm not really concerned about so long as they're all the same thickness, and this will make sense here shortly. So what I want to do is, you'll see that I've covered up all of the lines for my curve, which is kind of what I want to do. The question is, how long and at what angles do I want to cut this piece? If I'm using wider stock, that changes the conversation a bit, because I can use much longer material and the angle is going to be relatively similar, but I don't have to worry about cutting this too narrow and then cutting so many smaller pieces. So I think that this width is way overkill for this curve. I think the narrower curve is much closer to what it is I want for this specific design. But these are things that you should definitely consider when pricing out your material. The materials I'm using, this is poplar, really inexpensive stuff, but good density, good hardness. Alder, one could use, I suppose. Pine, I don't love. I think it's too soft for what it is we're wanting to do with it. There will be joinery that we're going to establish into this material. So I don't want something that's terribly soft, or more importantly, that will bruise easily and start compromising the integrity of your design. Okay, so bricklay I'm going to talk about here as I start assembling these things. But what I do want to talk about is, why can't I just use one piece? And what you can't see from end to end is that this one piece almost encompasses the entire curve. If I were to use the wider piece, I have fully captured that one consistent radius for what it is I'm doing. And in theory, that would work. Small problem here. When we start cutting into this piece in the ways that we're going to, I'm going to start generating a curve and a curve back around the other side. I don't know if you could see that. I'm just kind of sighting down what my drawing is calling for. So if I do this, and I also am going to trim this thing down to being more or less 3/4 of an inch. If it's a little bit more, that's great. If it's a little bit less, I'm starting to worry. But if I do this, then I'm probably okay in the center of that radius where my drawer front's going to be. But as I get to the extremities here and then on the other end, I start getting into some really nasty short grain. Make sure you can see the short grain I'm referring to. Nope. Sorry. Okay, so I get into some really nasty short grain here, which is something I cannot afford to do. So because of that, what I want to do is establishing a brick lay structure. So I'm going to forego the line that I just drew there. I want to take advantage of the straight grain. This is not a great example. There we go. More of the straight grain of this board, and then laid on top, I'm going to have straight grain following that continuous curve, and in doing so I'll be able to make this shape exponentially stronger with all the glue ups between the surfaces and the layers, taking advantage of the strength of the wood. So I can't use just one board, I've got to use multiple boards in this method in order to do it. Okay, so let me start cutting these things. In looking at what it is I want to do, just want to make sure I'm still in focus. Alright, so looking at the framework here, I don't want to go terribly long with this because I feel like that's not a terribly efficient use of my material, and I compromise a lot of the strength that I would otherwise get if I go just a little bit shorter. So what I'm trying to think of is where the tangent of this curve will come straight back to its center point. So if I'm looking at this, I want to create a curve that, or I'm sorry, a line that gets cut more or less like that. And then I'm looking at just this piece now. And then maybe from here, walking this thing back, those look like a decent curve, or a cut for me to establish this curve. What I'm going to be doing, yeah, bear with me, I just want to make sure I'm still in view. There we go. All right. Yes, good. All right, so I have two of these lines. I haven't measured anything. I haven't done this in a scientific method. These feel about right. My next method, or the step that I'm going to follow next, I'm going to take this to the miter saw. I'm going to cut this one piece. I'm going to cut another one the exact same length, same angles. These two angles should be the same. And then I'll cut a third piece. This angle should be the same. If I bisect this part and this part, this will be the same angle. I'll flip it around, I'll cut the other one and flip it. Then I'll have three pieces to be able to walk through on this curve. If I'm able to get three consistent pieces that follow these curves, then I know I'm set. You can try with 4, you can try with 5, but with just one piece, you're never going to be able to tell. 2 pieces, depending on your shape, it sometimes is not enough information. But 3 I've found is effective. So I'm going to cut these 3, I'm going to lay it out here, and then we'll start talking about what the next step is.